Hey, there I am. It is March 1st. And being me, there's always going to be a new project, right? No rest for the wicked, I guess. Anyway, hey, listen, I did a training series that we kept very confidential that my good friend, now good friend, I didn't know her that well at the time. I do now. I know her and her husband, Nate, now pretty well. Dina Holmes asked me to put together for her a few months ago after we met down in Florida. And we did that over the holidays and into January and in the early part of February. And Dina had a great idea. She said, why don't you turn this into an ebook and an MP3 so everybody can benefit by it if they want to. So listen, guys, this isn't the real recording. This is my kind of what I do before I record anything. I just kind of go up and play with it. Put together a book that'll be an ebook. Probably going to stick it up on Amazon just so people can get it. Probably make it like $10 with the MP3, $15 something. I don't need to make a lot of money on it, but the way Amazon works, of course, they take most of it. But anyway, I'm going to just kind of wing it today. Now, this little book is going to be called, as you may or may not be able to see, 7 Steps for Growth in Your Network Marketing Career. Your mentor, John Solleder. That's cool. Anyway, I'm going to send it to you guys. I'm going to send it to Keith and Foster, and also to Dina, of course, and to Giancarlo Torres, just kind of for you guys to take a look at it conceptually, okay? So I'm going to do kind of a recording of the first chapter. And this is for Immunotech, by the way, okay? This is not generic. I will probably end up doing one generic because obviously most of this material would apply to any network marketing company. But I think we're at a point where we need some real direction in terms of training. So anyway, hopefully you'll like it. I'd like your feedback. That's why I'm going to send it to you by email when I'm done with it today. Just kind of kick it around, give me back some notes, say, hey, great idea, lousy idea. I'd support it. I'd have some of my people buy it. And the fact that I'm going to do it on video, by the way, I'm also open to having some calls around it, obviously, Q&As, because that's really how our distributors learn better than anything else. I mean, that's where I learned from Mark Hughes and Larry Thompson 39 years ago and others along the way was Q&A. That's so valuable. So willing to do that to support it, certainly. I don't know if this is a long-term project or we put it out and we use it for a couple of months and, but anyway, we'll see where we go. So, all right, the first chapter, employing yourself and knowing your priorities. And the philosophy is important. And once again, they'll have a written copy of this and they'll have what I'm doing right now without me, giving you guys all the subtext. Philosophy. This is mentoring, not coaching. There is a vast difference between the two. Bill Belichick is probably the greatest NFL coach in history. He's won more Super Bowls than anybody. But if you put Bill Belichick on the football field, not only because he's 70 years old, but he didn't have the skills to play in the National Football League. And yet he's considered to be the greatest coach in the history, perhaps, of that sport. That would be an example of a guy who's a great coach, obviously, but not a great player. And when I say there's a difference between mentoring versus coaching, I've done this business, as you all well know. Okay, I've done it for it'll be 39 years. By the time that I publish this in April, it'll be 39 years that I've been in network marketing full-time. Tiny segue, into the life insurance business early on, first couple of years, but I was still doing network marketing full-time. As far as I was concerned, I had 2 full-time businesses, life insurance and network marketing. So as far as I'm concerned, since April 18th of 1983, I've never had anything but a 1099 income tax wise. So I've never worked for anybody else. Anyway, all that said, difference between mentoring and coaching. Okay. Now people can be great coaches in network marketing. It can be great life coaches, but if you've never done this business, you can't fake it. And there's a lot of fakes out there right now publishing books and making millions of dollars in some cases. And they're publishing stuff that doesn't even make any sense, So anyway, or it makes sense unless you've done the business and you go, that's not how it really works, okay? Because there's always a marketing plan, if you will, with a marketing plan behind the marketing plan and how it really all works. And I don't mean just from a compensation plan level, but from how does the business really work, okay? So hopefully that's what I'm going to portray on these calls. In addition to that, everything I've done is based on concepts. I started my career with Herbalife, as many of you know, and Herbalife had a great concept, and it was use the product, wear the button, talk to people. Use the product, wear the button, talk to people. Very simple, right? Anybody could put a button on that said, lose weight now, ask me how. And people would ask you about it, okay? Anybody could use the product, and anybody could talk to people. And that use, wear, talk built a company today that does, multiple billions of dollars in sales annually. So at the end of the day, that concept I've seen for 39 years, how well it has worked for that company. Now, did they do other things? Sure. They have great marketing? Sure. They are great marketers, that company. They have been when Mark was alive, and they still are today. But at the end of the day, you get around the Herbalife distributors, they're going to tell you use, wear, talk. I have a girl I went to high school with, never in the industry before, up in Boston, that is doing really well with use, wear, talk. So there you go. Okay, 3-2-1-1-2-3. 3-2-1-1-2-3 was real simple. It was 3 sets of tablets a day. Okay, that was their nutritional supplement. 2 shakes to lose weight, and 1 meal. And 1-2-3 was use the product, wear the button, talk to people, to build a business. That's a concept. A number of years later, I became vice president of a company here in Dallas. It was my only corporate gig, if you will. But even then I was paid as a consultant. So even then I had a 1099. And the fellow I worked with was a guy that I knew via my mentor, Larry Thompson. And when I went to work with Charlie Regis, interesting thing happened. We ordered what we thought was going to be 10,000 magazines. And ironically, Charlie was going on vacation. He was a big hunter. He was going out to Colorado to do some game hunting with a couple of friends. And he walked into warehouse. It was a Friday morning. I'll never forget this. He walked into warehouse. Charlie was a big guy. He was an ex-pro football player. And he came in my office and he said, buddy, you got a problem. And I'm thinking, well, what are you going to do? Fire me? He goes, we have 100,000 magazines back there. I said, you got to be kidding me. And I went back, and we had 100,000 magazines. The printer had screwed up, which meant we, by the way, owed the printer for 100,000 magazines, not 10,000. And ironically, that particular magazine had the Kansas City Chiefs football team, one of their players on it who was using the product, and we had a arrangement with the Chiefs at that time, so we were able to use that likeness, which was great. And I came up with a system called 10 squared. And 10 squared kind of worked like this. You would buy magazines. This was a way to, by the way, to move the magazines, because when you're corporate and the boss says, you better move these magazines, you better figure out a way. So I came up with a way while he was on vacation to sell those magazines. But the distributors had to know what to do with them. Otherwise, why would they spend, their hard-earned money on it? What are they going to do? Buy one for their office, but otherwise, what were they going to do with them? So I came up with a little system called 10 squared, where essentially they would take that magazine, they would take a cassette tape, for those of you who remember cassette tapes, for Giancarlo and the other young people, I've got one on my desk somewhere here. Yeah, this is what they looked like. This was what a cassette tape looked like. This is what we used to listen to in the dark ages. And I also took a little booklet that we had put together on debt freedom. And we started to give them out. And then I backed that up, where Monday you would give those out. Tuesday night, we would have a conference call to support the people you gave them to. So you gave them out today. The person took the magazine, listened to the cassette tape, read the little booklet, or any gyration of all three. And you followed up. We taught you to follow up, okay, after you gave that to them the next day and say, hey, listen, I'm having a call tonight. Let me 3-way you in. So we guaranteed an audience, because every distributor that was doing that had at least one person that they did that with, okay? Wednesday, you gave out more of those. Thursday night, we had a conference call. Friday, you gave out more. Saturday, we had a conference call. Follow? So we had 3 conference calls a week. And conference calls were a big deal, by the way. This was in the early part of the 1990s. And essentially, those calls, myself, Mr. Regis, and other leaders in the company, we would do those calls to support the field so they'd hear the right stories, okay? The 10 squared part came in real simple. You had to buy 100 magazines, because I wanted to give out 10 on Monday, 10 on Wednesday, 10 on Friday. Could you give them out Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday? Of course you could. Okay. The idea was over the course of a calendar month, you gave out at least 100, right? So if you do the math, if you gave it at least 30 a week or so, times 4 weeks is 120. So you bought 100 magazines. So we heavily discounted them, obviously, because we had a lot of them. And that helped to jumpstart the sales in that company. Okay. That helped to jumpstart the sales in that company, which were okay at that point, but they weren't growing. And all of a sudden, the distributors had a concept that they bought into that they continued long after, me being gone from that company. And it helped grow it into a sizable company. So that's a concept that I developed. Okay. And sometimes you got to develop these concepts, by the way, out of necessity. Okay. Whether it's that the printer sends you 100,000 of something. Hey, if we had 10,000, they didn't do any good sitting in the warehouse. We had to get them out so people could see them, right? Okay. So next thing. Where does it all start? Okay. It starts with you. It all starts with you. You have to learn how to employ yourself. Look, at the end of the day, this is a business. It's not a hobby. It's a business. And you have to learn in a business how to work in your own business. So that's partly what we're going to do in, this booklet is hopefully help people to really understand not only that it's their own business, but what they have to do in their own business to grow their business. Okay. Some of you have heard Larry Thompson talk about this. Some of you have heard other leaders in the industry talk about this concept, but it's one that's very, very important is learning how to employ yourself. So let's talk about that. First thing somebody has to do is figure out how many hours they can apply per week. Because keep in mind, the majority of our distributors are and always will be doing this on the side. They always will be. That's just reality. Okay. And if you say to yourself, okay, well, if they're going to do it on the side, how are they going to do it? Now, I would like to see if somebody said to me, John, what's a perfect amount of time? If you could put in 4 hours a day, 6 days a week, I would call you serious part-time. I would call you banging on the door full-time. Now, where do I take that from? I take that from when I was in the insurance business and I reached the top 10 level at a company at the same time that I was also one of the top life insurance agents for the company that I worked for. Okay. I spent about 4 hours a day in network marketing. Okay. And now, by the way, they weren't always the same 4 hours. Those 4 hours might have been from 8 to 9 in the morning. And I might have a staff meeting in my insurance business at 10 o'clock, or I might have to meet a client at 10 o'clock. And then all of a sudden I was done with that client. And I had from, 1 to 2 where I didn't have any appointments. I could get on the phone and build my network marketing business, follow. But I put in about 4 hours a day into my network marketing activities back then. And I was able to build a very serious second income at the same time. And that eventually, led me back into full-time network marketing, moved to Toronto, and that's another story. But at the end of the day, I remember back those 4 hours that I was very, very disciplined. Okay. Now there was no call waiting in those days, by the way. Okay. So somebody couldn't call me from the insurance company and say, hey, you got an appointment, da, da, da. I put 4 hours in. So if I went home and made those phone calls, or if I had somebody to meet that was interested in the business, if I had a retail customer to service, I put 4 hours in a day. And over a 6-day work week, as I've always believed in working 6 days a week, that's 24 hours in a week. Okay, it's 96 hours roughly in a month. Call it 100 with a 31-day month. That's a good level of part-time activity. Now, does that mean everyone's going to be able to do it to that level? No. But when somebody says to you, well, I'm going to be part-time, they can't put in 5 minutes a day. It's just not going to work for them. You got to be honest with people. Okay. You can't lie to them. You got to be honest with them. Hey, I put in 3 hours today. Can I put in 5 hours tomorrow? Sure. But just try to get to that point where that 4 hours happens. And even somebody with an 8-hour-a-day job can probably get 4 hours in once again. Early in the morning, get an hour in, maybe get their lunch hour, a couple hours after work, hitting the phone after dinner, et cetera, if they can do that. If you're working coast to coast and you live on the East Coast or the Central Time Zone like I do, hey, maybe you can't get to the phone until 8 o'clock at night your time. Well, it's only 6 o'clock in California and the West Coast, for example. Okay. So keep all of that in mind as you do that. Once again, if they can't do 4 hours, that's great. Is the business still going to work for them? Yeah. It might take them more time to build a serious part-time income, but that's okay. But they got to put in the hours. Unfortunately, there's just no, it's kind of like going to the gym. I think back to Jim Rohn, used to say, you can't pay somebody to do your push-ups. Well, it's the same with this. You can't pay somebody else to do it. You got to do it. All right. So now Let's talk a little bit more about how do you make those 4 hours valuable. In those 4 hours, you have to be working. You've got to have appointments. You've got to have people that you're chasing. You've got to have your lists done. Okay. You got to have the people that you're going after, right? You have to constantly add to that list. You got to constantly meet new people, collect business cards, collect data. So you're constantly saying, I got new people to talk to. Okay. And in the beginning, obviously, who should people talk to, right? Their friends, their relatives, their neighbors, their business associates, their buddies at the gym, their friends from church, their whatever, their warm market. Don't send somebody out and say, go get leads or advertise on Facebook. They're going to get eaten alive and they're going to get disappointed real quick and they'll probably quit the business. Have them work warm market. Even if they do that as the warm-up act, okay? Even if they burn through 4, 5, 6 people with you hand in hand, and it's, 6 of their cousins and they all say no, that's okay. It's on the job training for them, okay? Once again, we're teaching these people how to employ themselves so they understand what to say, what to do, etc. Okay. Now, I did a little example here, Dina 1 and Dina 2, right? Dina 1 talking to Dina 2. And Dina 1 is really serious about building her business. But Dina 2 wants to goof off and go to the beach. Now, if you know Dina lives near the beach, for real. Dina could go to the beach 7 days a week. But it's not going to build her business. So Dina 1 has to tell Dina 2, if she's part-time, you got to put those 4 hours in. Now, if you put those 4 hours in and they're 4 good hours in a day, and it's between 8 and 12, let's say, in the morning, and it's a Saturday, and she wants to go on her boat or go to the beach or go for a swim or go for a run in the park or walk her dog or spend time doing something with her husband and kids, by all means. But you got to earn those things, right? Where Dina 1 has to tell Dina 2, hey, if I was your employer and we said 4 hours a day and I was paying you X amount of dollars per hour, you'd have to show up those 4 hours. Part-time job at Starbucks, at 7-Eleven, at Tim Hortons, you got to show up. You got to show up in your own business. And that's the whole concept, Dina 1, Dina 2. Okay, and I'm borrowing that from Larry once again, Larry 1 and Larry 2, but I think it's a brilliant analogy. Most people may have heard it, but more than that, they need to understand it. So I'll go a little bit deeper in that when I do the actual book, a couple of other examples so they kind of get that analogy. Now, let's talk about traditional business. People get into our business not understanding necessarily that if they went into traditional business, they went out and they bought a McDonald's, they went out and they bought a Subway, they went out and they bought a franchised hair salon. You're talking somewhere between $1 million and $10 million that you're going to be signing your name for. You're probably going to be borrowing a lot of money from friends, relatives, banks, your pension plan, etc. And you're going to put your back against the wall to become successful. So why do you think you're going to be in network marketing and you're going to spend, in the Immunotech case, $500, $600, $700, and you're going to be successful overnight? You got to have the same strategy in your head and the same discipline to say, hey, business evolving to success is going to take time. I've got to spend the time in my business to learn my craft. I've got to spend the time in the business to learn my craft. Now think about that for a minute. Whatever else you've done in life, maybe you play the piano or the guitar or another musical instrument. You didn't pick it up and play it. Somebody showed you, if it was the guitar, for example, here's a chord. Here's how you hold the guitar, right? I've been involved in sports my whole life, a number of different sports. I'm powerlifting shirt on right now, for example. When I started learning that sport, I learned it from Mike Womack, one of the best guys in the world, and what he does in the bench press. Do you know there's technique? The average person just looks at it and says, well, you lay on your back and you take the weight off the bar and you bring it down, you put it to your chest, you push it up. Yeah, with a couple 100 pounds. Try to put 400 or 500 on and do that. You'll get hurt. Plain and simple. Once again, there's a right way and a wrong way to do something, and it takes time to learn it. You've got to give yourself that time. What happens if you spend that $1 million or $2 million or $5 million or $10 million to go into a traditional business that you start? You got your back against the wall every single day because you got to make those note payments. Network marketing, generally, we write a check or we stick it on a credit card, and it's like, hey, if I don't sell all the product, no big deal. I'll use it and I quit the business. Well, some people do that. But if you want to build a business, you got to give yourself the same time that McDonald's franchisee or Subway franchisee or Tim Hortons franchisee or real estate person or life insurance executive, that any of those people give to their business. And there's a million other examples, obviously, but you get the point. Okay, so we gotta get people to understand that. You got to give yourself time to succeed and to learn your business. This is a learned business. If it wasn't, we wouldn't see people in some cases with no education do incredibly well, whether it's in our company or a lot of other companies in the industry have examples, people, no education, maybe didn't even go to high school for whatever reason. People from some third world countries that are extremely successful. So once again, if you needed a lot of special education to do this, you wouldn't have a lot of achievers. We have a lot of achievers because the business can be learned. That was one of the things I heard in 1983 that really got me. I can learn what these successful people do. I went to that very first large meeting in Hartford, Connecticut, where I met Larry Thompson the first time. Larry was not the only successful person there. There were a lot of people there, a lot of distributors in Connecticut and New England that were making some major money. Blew me away, the kind of money these people were making. And I looked at them and I said, no different than me. I might be a little bit younger. I was starting a business in college. I might have been a couple years younger than most of them. But outside of that, they put their pants on the same way I did. Okay. And that's something you've got to metabolize in your thinking. You got to get that straight in your thinking. Anybody you bring into business, whether they're a Harvard MBA or they didn't graduate to 12th grade, can be successful if you mentor them properly. And that's where your mentorship comes in. So let's go on to a few other things here today. Okay. I'll give you one last concept there. If you did own the local restaurant, the local McDonald's, the local Burger King, the local Wendy's, whatever, and you were going to go open your store, let's say at 5 o'clock in the morning for breakfast. And you got there and for whatever reason, the egg truck didn't show up. Most people, right, eat eggs for breakfast. Okay. What would you do? Would you put, we're closed today, we didn't get any eggs? Mm-mm. You'd hightail it down to the local supermarket and you'd buy as many eggs as you possibly could. You'd call your spouse and your teenage kids to drive, and they'd be going to every 7-Eleven, every convenience store, every Kroger's and A&P and Walmart in the area and buy as many eggs as you possibly can, because you can't be out of business one day. Because if you are, your customer will find either another store similar to yours, if they like your brand, or they'll find a competitor and they'll be gone. It's the way we got to think in network marketing. We got to have a little bit of desperation in us in terms of how we build that we really want to get the job done. So I want to touch on that as well. Okay. This whole thing about I'm the owner, it's not my job, I have employees, drives me nuts when I hear somebody tell me that multi-level, it's not my job. Folks, this guy here, me, has painted warehouses, okay, in network marketing companies, has shipped product around the world in network marketing companies, has scrubbed the toilets in one company where I was embarrassed because, anyway, I won't tell you why I was embarrassed, but it wasn't clean and I had prospects in the next room. Okay. And in all those cases, I could say, it's not my job. It's always your job. Making the right appearances to your distributors is always your job. Okay. They're your distributors, but not the company's distributors. They're your distributors. You got to have ownership in how you do everything, from how you present yourself to how you present your company to, you know, every facet of your business you want to be right on with. Okay. As best you possibly can. Some things you just, you know, they are what they are. But that's something, once again, we got to get in people's heads, okay, is everything is our job as a distributor, okay, everything. Look at it that way, and you'll succeed the way that you can in this business that others have already done so. So let's talk a little bit about focus, okay? You got to be focused on what you're doing. You got to spend the time in your business every single day. Now I'm talking bigger than the part-time person, even for a person like yourselves that are listening to this that perhaps are full-time. This is your full-time job. This is, you know, how you put groceries in the refrigerator and gasoline in the car. You've got to have discipline, okay? You've got to look at your business and say, what can I do today to constantly improve it? And that comes down to what? talking to new people. So what's your priorities? Priority number one, new business trumps everything else, okay? A new prospect that you're showing the business to is more important than the phone call from one of your distributors that wants to call you and discuss maybe some issue even going on in the company that's a negative. Let it go to voicemail. If you're talking to that new person, give them 100% of your attention. Because if you're distracted at all, that potential new distributor, they see that. Well, I'm not that important because you're worried about your other phone call coming in, or you're worried about your dog barking, or you're worried about it's dinner time. Okay. If you're talking to somebody that potentially is a game changer in your business, and every person is, because you don't know who's going to lead you to that next person. You don't know who's going to lead you to that person that becomes a top 10 level in our company. Okay. You don't know who that person is. You don't know who they know. Perfect example. Years ago, I was working and living in Toronto, Canada. And the office that we had for the company, I worked out of. I was a distributor, but because I lived in Toronto part of the time, I would use the office and the company let me. And anyhow, it was in an office park where they used to come around with a coffee truck, right? A roach coach, they're also called, right? Not the cleanest things in the world. But I, in those days, used to drink coffee. And for whatever reason, the company owner never invested in a coffee machine. And I never went out and bought one for whatever reason. So this young guy would come along. His name was Ralph. And he would sell coffee every day. And I'd buy a sandwich or something. But I'd always get my coffee from him. I normally got a couple cups of coffee because I'd be in the office for a lot of hours. Anyhow, he eventually said, "What do you guys do?" And I told him about that particular product and business. And it turned out it was a weight loss product that we were marketing at that time. And he said, my mom's best friend just had a baby and she's looking to lose weight. Well, that best friend wound up being married to a guy who became the number 2 earner in that company eventually that I was in. I was number 1. He was number 2. His name was Piero Del Bianco. Some of you have heard of him. He's retired now from the industry. But Piero became my top earner and the company's second top earner. I met him through a guy who drove a truck. Now, the guy sponsored him, never came to a meeting, didn't bother to renew his distributor agreement, tried to reach him on the phone a few times, when his annual renewal came up, didn't pay it. Well, anyway, long story short, Piero and I went on for 8 years together to build a really big downline that would have been underneath that young man. But keep in mind, I met this guy buying my coffee from him every day. You don't know who people know. In Immunotech, Dr. Palaio is sponsored by a friend of his who's a very good network marketer who's never really built our business. He was building another company, but he felt Ricardo would like Immunotech because obviously, Immunical. And Ricardo did. And, the rest is history. He's built a humongous business. His sponsor is a guy who's in the supermarket business in Canada still. And his sponsor is another guy who's at the executive diamond level. And his sponsor is Wally Kralik, who's a platinum. Okay. And Wally's sponsor is yours truly. So at the end of the day, Dr. Palaio came from somebody who at best is part-time. Okay. In our business. And his upline, part-time in our business. So if you follow that, you don't know who somebody knows. So that's why you got to prioritize talking to those people and giving them 100% of your attention. You can call your existing distributors back. For that matter, you can call your wife or husband back. And now if somebody's in a hospital or having a baby or something that is going on, and you got to say, hey, I got that, people will understand that. But short of that, you give that person 100% of your attention. That's what's going to grow your business. New business that you're dedicated to, that you're locking arms with, that you're showing that person, hey, you're serious, I'm serious, let's lock arms and go to work together. Okay? So that's a discipline that you have to develop. I'm going to turn the page here. I actually have notes, which, like I said, this is in a book form, so bear with me here. I got to take this out of here and go to page 2. And now I ripped it. That's not good. Okay. In the old days, I would have to copy these. Now I just hit print on my computer and I'm good to go. Okay, so next thing. let's talk about administrative cleanup, okay? Scheduling trips and that sort of thing. All of that stuff has to be done in your non-networking time. Now, what do I mean by that? So, for example, you got a trip coming up. You're going to go support one of your groups in another city, okay? If you're making phone calls between, let's say, 7 and 9 p.m. local time, whatever time zone you live in, and the people you're calling are in those time zones, and you need to schedule a trip, you do it after that, okay? You can call the airline at 9:30 at night. They'll answer the phone, okay? But you can't call a prospect who maybe has worked all day, they're winding down. You got to call them at the right time where in their thinking they're still in business time, okay? In addition to that, all your emails, cleanup type of thing, okay? What I call correspondence. I don't know how you think of it, but it's correspondence. I need to send emails to downline, to corporate, to prospects. I need to send videos perhaps to prospects off of our app. All of that I'm going to do in time where I'm not networking, trying to get new business. Follow? Okay? Do those things in the off hours, all right? Don't make busy work during networking time, okay? Whatever that is for you. Once again, past 9 o'clock at night, I think it's rude to call anybody, quite honestly. So I wouldn't do that. Some people, that's 8 o'clock, I don't know. But when you're networking, you be networking. When you're administrating, you do that on the non-networking time, so to speak. And I only say that because I get people sometimes that tell me they're not available for a Zoom call because they're doing something that they could do at another time of the day, or they could do 24 hours in a day. Get up an hour early and get it done if it's correspondence. Matter of fact, that's generally, if you get emails from me, a lot of times you will get them at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, my time, because nobody's bothering me then. Nobody's calling me then. My wife is asleep. The kids are either at school or asleep. I'm going to do that then because I can focus on that then and get that done then better than I can when I know I need to be on the phone or on a Zoom call or, you know, as we get back to live meetings, be in a live meeting with someone, okay? Now, here's another thing, and I learned this from Tom Hopkins. If you don't know Tom Hopkins, Tom is been a trainer in network marketing, but really in the real estate world and the direct selling world for 40 years, incredible guy. And I met Tom when I was quite young, but Tom taught me before I go to bed, write down the 6 most important priorities for the next day. And to this day, I do that. Before I go to bed, 5, 10 minutes before bed, right? I will just write those things down on a piece of scratch paper and I'll either put it next to my bed or I'll stick it in my wallet if I know I'm leaving the house first thing in the morning. So I prioritize that those 6 things are going to get done during the course of that day. And if there's 2 or 3 that are real priorities, like I have somebody that's joining the business tomorrow, I need to get their credit card, I need to get them enrolled, and not so much because I'm getting a commission. That's a result. I need to get their product out of the warehouse so that person gets using the product, gets the benefits of the product, and gets more excited about the business. Follow? So that would be priority number 1. Obviously, I would circle that one and say, call, you know, Bob Jones at 8 p.m. because that's when Bob has to be called. That would be there, okay, as number 1 and circled, okay? But there's always at least 6 priorities, even on a Saturday or Sunday. There's always 6 things I know that are going to come up during that day that I got to get done, okay? It just kind of helps you. The other thing it does, it locks it in your brain. I got 6 things I need to do tomorrow. What are those 6 things? Who are those 6 prospects? Who are those 2 prospects? The other 4 things might be, you know, I need to mail, you know, my passport, for example. I need to mail my passport, okay, tomorrow. It's on my list for tonight because I'm waiting for something that I have to put in with it, okay? So tomorrow, I'm going to do that, okay? It's on my list tonight. It's got to get done. Okay, why? Because I'm leaving for Germany in 2 months and I need to get it there and get it back in a timely fashion, okay? So once again, that's prioritizing the day. So every day you've got some accomplishments. There's another thing with that, by the way. There's a great speech made by a guy, and I'm forgetting his name, but he gave a speech. He's a naval admiral. And he gave a speech down here at the University of Texas commencement a few years back. And that speech said, first thing you do when you wake up, make your bed. Now, that's a priority in the military, I know. But his rationale, and he's 100% right. I think his name's McCackrin or something like that. His point was, you've accomplished something. That sets the day. Follow? Those 6 things set the day. You know what you're going to do today because you wrote it down the night before, told your brain, get those 6 things done. Whether it's mailing your passport, calling a prospect, paying your income taxes, paying your water bill, calling your father-in-law for his birthday, whatever those things are, personal or business, get them down every night. It's going to help you once again to put your day together the next day. Okay. A couple miscellaneous things. All right. Write everything down. Okay. For example, that very first meeting I ever went to, Hartford, Connecticut. I'm just a college kid, just graduated. And I'll never forget that Larry Thompson said, for things to change, you have to change. And for things to get better, you have to get better. I wrote that down. I put that in my journal. For things to change, you have to change. For things to get better, you have to get better. 39 years later, I can say that in my sleep. You can wake me up and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I can say that because it became a mantra, follow? But when I wrote it down, I have shared that in over 50 countries that I've done some sort of a meeting or training for over these last 39 years. See, Larry shared it. Jim wrote it. Jim Rohn, I believe. We all believe that. We're not sure, but we think Jim Rohn wrote that. Sounds like a Jim Rohn, certainly. If it wasn't, it may have been Bobby DePew. But regardless of who wrote it, Larry said it, I wrote it down, and I told it to other people who also today say it. Okay? Point being, when you write something down, it becomes yours. So, as I'm giving you these notes, write these things down. Now, I know you got the booklet, but the booklet and even the MP3 is not going to make 100% sense like your notes when you write it down and maybe you underline it in your journal and you go back to it each and every time. How important is the journal? Well, some of you know this story. I met with Jim Rohn one time in my life, met Jim numerous occasions, but one time in my life, I had the opportunity to actually sit down, cross the table from him and share a meal. And during that meal, there was 2 other guys at that meal. And those 2 guys did not have their journals, even though they believed in journaling. I can tell you, those guys were voracious on taking notes. One owned the company, and the other was a guy who actually had worked for Jim that was now working with us. Long story short, Jim looked at me and he said, you know, these other 2 guys, I'm not sure if they can be saved or not because of their age. You, however, young man, can still be saved. I knew exactly what he meant. I ran to my car. You would have thought I was Usain Bolt. I ran to my car. I brought back my journal. And Jim made a salient point. He said, what if the waiter, and this is what Jim used to talk about, what if the waiter said something so incredible, and he said it and he left the table, you never saw him again. And by the time you get to your car, you're going to forget what he said. Wow. That was Jim Rohn. But Jim's point was, write it down. You're never going to remember it. Wait till you get to be a little bit older. You're not going to remember what you ate for lunch yesterday. Write it down. Get a journal. Invest in some journals. Okay. When you're gone, your kids and grandkids will read your journals more than they're going to, you know, I don't know, do what. Okay. But at the end of the day, those journals are so important in terms of how we learn. And when we write things down, by the way, somehow it locks it into our brain. If that for things to change, you have to change. I haven't written that down in 39 years. I got it that day. It became part of my MO. It became something I believed in. It was something that I shared, and it's something I believe to this day. Okay. So once again, it doesn't matter who you hear it from. The second that you write it down, it becomes your property. Okay. So there you go. Hey, that's the end of chapter 1. So listen, guys, there's a lot more here. All right. Duplication and the art of the invitation is chapter 2. Chapter 3 is recruiting a prospect. Let's talk about recruiting. How do we take money in this business, right? If it doesn't duplicate is chapter 4. If it doesn't duplicate, don't do it. Okay. Chapter 5 is on how to package your story. Chapter 6, handling problems in the organization. You really kind of want to listen to that, boy, because that is something I know when Dina and I went through that, she had a few good laughs, but she also had a few good ha-ha moments. So we can ask her about that. And of course, chapter 7 is how to set goals and understand quantum physics and how to do that and how the brain works. And I did add an eighth illustration here. And the eighth illustration is basically the charts that Randy Gage has put together with our videos, because I want to discuss that once again, specifically, for Immunotech. So listen, guys, take a look at this. Give me your feedback in the next couple of days. I'm going to obviously, comb my hair and put on my leaving nothing to chance shirt when I do this, but give me your feedback. It's important to me. I appreciate it. And once again, I think it's something that's going to help with everything else that's going on to continue to explode our business. So thanks for your time.